Hello, good morning. It's Saturday and it's time for another reading vlog. Now, I meant to start this video yesterday, but I didn't. And I have no excuse. I don't know why. I just didn't. But the important thing is that I am here now. And I have some pretty ambitious reading plans this weekend. I realise that they're probably a little bit unrealistic, but I'm going to show you what I plan to read. I am also going out this afternoon and out tomorrow afternoon, and tomorrow afternoon I'll probably be going out for quite a few hours walking around Hampstead, so I will try and get some footage there as well because it is very pretty. And let's get into the reading plans. So my main read this weekend is Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and this is the first time that I am reading this book, but Fairy Loot are coming out with a finale special edition box, which is the final book in this trilogy, and so I wanted to pick it up. It's been on my TBR for a while anyway, and this follows two sisters as they go to the Caraval, which is a game run by a magician, I suppose, called Master Legend. And it's supposed to be a game, but I'm getting the sense that it's a little bit of a mystery, thrillery type situation. I am on page 166 of this one, and there are 400 pages, so if I'm being optimistic, I am hoping to finish this one today. It's a fairly fast-paced read. So far, my thoughts are that there are three main characters, and I'm not particularly a fan of any of them, which probably isn't a good sign because I am usually a more character-driven reader. So the fact that I'm not connecting with any of the characters isn't great for me, but the plot is interesting and that is keeping me invested, and I'm hoping that what's going to happen is that as the characters grow and develop, I will develop more of a relationship with them. But so far they all have very, very different personalities, but very extreme in their personalities, and that's just frustrating me a little bit. Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Then we come to my audiobook of the weekend, and I am listening on audio to The Alchemist, The Alchemist, The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel by Michael Scott, and I am currently on page 103 of this book, but as I say, I'm listening to it on audio. This is a reread. I read this for the first time in my early teens and I really enjoyed it, and I'm really glad that I'm rereading it actually because it's still a very fun story. We follow twins named Sophie and Josh who get caught up in a war between Nicholas Flamel and Dr. John Dee, who is the antagonist in this series. I can't remember how many books are in the series. I think it might be 5. I can check that and let you know later. But what I like about this series is that it combines a lot of mythologies all into one. So we of course have Nicholas Flamel and the Philosopher's Stone, but we also have, just so far in these first 100 pages, we have golems, for example, and the Elder Race and magic and Morrigan Crow. So it's just a combination of a lot of mythologies. It is a middle grade series, so the writing is fairly basic and some of the descriptions and things like that are very basic and perhaps a little bit more basic than I think that they need to be, but fundamentally it's still a really fun and enjoyable story so far, and I am glad that I'm rereading it. I managed to get this one on Libby, so that's where I'm listening to it, and it's not a particularly long audiobook. I think it's only just over 9 hours. Like I said, I'm on page 103, and this book has 369 pages, so it's not especially long either. I probably won't finish it this weekend just because I'm planning on doing a lot of physical reading, but I'm really enjoying this one and I'm glad that I've picked it back up again so that I can reread the books that I've already read and then finish the series. Now moving on to books that I would like to read this weekend, and this is where we somewhat get into the more optimistic side of things, I think. So I have this manga that I would like to pick up called Maid Sama by Hiro Fujiwara. This is volumes 1 and 2 bound up together, and I mean it's manga so it's quicker to get through. Anyway, I would like ideally to read at least one volume of this just because I feel like I'm in a manga kind of mood at the moment. I'm really keen to pick up some manga, so I'm hoping that I can get to at least one volume of this weekend, if not finish it, but let's try and be at least somewhat realistic. I would like to read at least one volume of this, and this is about a high school student who also works in a maid cafe in her spare time, and when one of the popular guys from school comes into the maid cafe, she's worried about the damage that could be done to her prim and proper studious image that she gives everybody at school. And I get the impression as well that she kind of likes this guy, and there might be some romance in this one, which I'm really looking forward to because I feel like I've been reading a lot of quite heavy stuff recently. I just finished the 5th season and that was definitely very, very heavy. Caraval isn't quite as heavy, but it's not light and fluffy either. So I need some light and fluffy, and a nice romance in manga form might be just the ticket. And then, speaking of heavy, I would like to pick up Foundry Side. This is a book that I'm really, really excited to read, and this will be my main read once I finish Caraval. I think I will pick this one right up and I will fit the manga in between. This is the first book in a new epic fantasy series by Robert Jackson Bennett, and I heard Reagan talking about this over the Christmas period when she picked it up, and she raved about it and said that she absolutely loved it, which was what she said about Stormlight, and I picked up Stormlight, which I'd been putting off. Stormlight Archive by Brendan Sanderson, I mean. I'd been putting off reading that series because I was concerned about the fact that there were only 3 books out of the 10 that he had planned or has planned. But Reagan raved about it so much that I decided to pick it up, and I was so glad that I did because it's a fantastic series, and she raved about this one too, so I'm definitely intrigued to pick it up. This follows a thief named Sansia in a mystical world or a fantastical world with a pretty interesting magic system by the sounds of it. I understand that the magic system is if you know a specific language, you can use that language to change the makeup of objects, and Sansia has a special ability in that when she touches objects she can understand their history, which gives her greater power over those objects, and she is employed to steal an artifact that is heavily guarded, and she succeeds and then realises that perhaps that wasn't the best idea because now the underground elements of the city are after her and want her dead. So that sounds really interesting to me. I love an inventive magic system. That's probably what attracts me to this book the most, because give me an interesting magic system to sink my teeth into any day. I just love it. So I'm really looking forward to picking this one up, and I've just noticed on the back that he actually has a full trilogy that is out as well, which is called City of Stars. Book 2, City of Blades. Book 3, City of Miracles. I have no idea what it's about, but if I like Robert Jackson Bennett's writing, then it is good to know that he has another trilogy that is already out and completed. But I'm really excited to get to this one, so that's why I'm so keen to finish Caraval today so that I can pick up Foundryside tomorrow, or even this evening. Let's not be too ambitious. Basically, I got a lot of really amazing books for my birthday. If you haven't seen it, I've got a birthday book haul up here, or up here, up here, up here, up here. And I'm really excited to read each and every one of them. So this is my next project after I finish this one, and I'm ready for it. Hello, so I haven't actually updated you in a while. It's now Saturday evening, but I have been out for my counselling session, and then I came back and had lunch and fell asleep for a while. Shocker. I'm now on page 268 of Caraval, so I'm pretty sure that I'm going to finish this today. As I anticipated, as the story is going on, I am feeling more of a connection with the characters, which is good because that is something that I was worried about, because I was feeling slightly irritated by some of the more extreme aspects of their personalities, but now that we're more into the story, those extremes are softening a little bit. I think that they were just being used as a way to tell the reader what these people were like, but it was just a little bit too dramatic. And now that that's levelled out a bit, I am feeling more of a connection with the characters. The main protagonist in this one is Scarlett, and at the beginning of the story she is very much a rule follower and an anxious person, but to an extreme degree, and I found myself getting irritated with that, which is slightly ironic because it's kind of relatively close to my personality. I'm not going to go into that too much further, but I am definitely enjoying it more, and I am very interested to see what is going to happen. What I will say is this book is very much a mystery, and so I don't want to tell you too much about what it's about, because I think that the more you know about the story, the less you would get out of it. So I'm not necessarily going to say any more about the plot than I already have, but I am enjoying it. It is fast paced, which I appreciate, and that's where I'm going to leave it for now. Like I said, I'm hoping that I will finish this today, so I will be able to update you on my final thoughts later this evening, hopefully. In the meantime, Lee and I have ordered pizza for dinner, and I'm very much looking forward to eating that. If I do finish Caraval in time, then as planned I will move on to Maid Sama tonight and try and get a little bit of manga reading done, hopefully. And I did listen to a little bit of The Alchemist whilst I was travelling, and I will probably listen to a little bit more when I'm getting ready for bed and things. So again, I will update you on that later on as well. But for now, I'm going to try and get as much reading done before the pizza arrives as possible, and then I will probably finish the book after pizza. Check in with you then. So, I just wanted to do a quick final check-in before bed because I have managed to finish Caraval by Stephanie Garber and start Maid Sama. I've only read about a chapter of Maid Sama so far, so I don't have any real thoughts to give you on this one just yet, apart from I think it's kind of cute and it's enjoyable so far. Like I said, I'm just about to go to bed, so I'll give you my full thoughts on Caraval tomorrow. Also, by then I will have had time to ruminate on the story, but I gave it 3 stars. I did enjoy it, and I'll talk more about that in the next clip. Good morning, guys. I am getting ready to go out now, and so I thought that I would talk to you about Caraval while I am getting ready. So if I am looking here instead of here, that's because I have my mirror set up just there so that I can do my makeup while I'm chatting to you. So, like I mentioned last night, I finished Caraval yesterday and I did enjoy it. The plot was interesting and it was quite fast paced, which I like. I like it when a plot just sort of gets going rather than taking a long time to build up. This plot was pretty much just go from the beginning, which I appreciated, and there was a reasonable amount of intrigue. I was never 100% sure going through the story what was going to happen, but it's a little bit difficult to talk about it because I think that it's the kind of book that the less you know going into it about the plot, the more you will get out of it, because there is a lot of intrigue and that's sort of the main point of the story. The mysterious elements of the story are the most engaging, I found. So I think the more you know about that, the less you're likely to enjoy the book, because that certainly was what kept me engaged. As for the characters, as I mentioned yesterday, I didn't necessarily develop a connection with them straight away. It probably took until about 60% of the way through the book before I felt a real connection with any of the characters, and I think that that's because for the beginning portion of the book the characters were very one-dimensional in my opinion. So we had a character who was really reckless and impulsive, but that was all they were, and then we had another character who was, you know, typical bad boy, and that's all he was. And then, as I mentioned, the protagonist is very much the rule-following, anxiety-ridden character, but that's all she was, and I found myself getting irritated because it was just a little bit too one-note and formulaic for me. People are a lot more complicated than just one trait, and the characters didn't develop that realistic persona until, like I said, about 50-60% of the way through the book, which made the first half of the book a little bit more difficult to engage with. Even though I was enjoying the plot, I am a character-driven reader, and so it was difficult for me to have characters that I was just finding a bit irritating, really, because their predominating part of their character was all that I was seeing, and that was a little bit sort of frustrating for me. So I wasn't necessarily a massive fan of the characters. I'm looking forward to reading the second book in the series though, because now that I've developed that relationship with those characters, I think that I will engage better with book 2 than I did with book 1, although I think book 2 has a different protagonist. So it'll be interesting to see whether I have the same problems with the first half of the book as I did with Caraval. Book 2 is called Legendary. I'm expecting the plot to still be interesting as it was in this one, but I am interested to see what's going to happen with the characters. The world was interesting, but I don't think it was as well developed as it could have been, and it certainly wasn't as atmospheric as I would have thought that it would be, because, like I said, I don't want to mention too much about the plot because I don't want to take away from your experience of reading it if you haven't read it yet. But the setup of the story is these sisters who desperately want to go to a Caraval, which is like a magical carnival, except there's a mystery to solve and there's magic, and it's all sort of a strange mix of dark and whimsical. And so I would have thought that the world would have been more of a focus and that more time would have been spent on creating that atmosphere, but actually there was relatively little time spent on world building or atmosphere because the primary focus of the story was the plot, and so I sort of did miss out a little bit on that world building and atmosphere, which with the idea of the story could have been really interesting. So I am also hoping that more time will be spent on that in book 2. Having said all of that though, this is a young adult fantasy novel, so I did mention in my recent guide to the levels of fantasy video that typically speaking I find that in the low fantasy, especially young adult and middle grade subgenres of fantasy, there is less world building, so I'm not necessarily overly surprised that there isn't a lot of world building, but I do think it's a shame because it's such an interesting concept that I think that the world building could have been a really interesting element that we perhaps missed out on a little bit. And I don't think we necessarily needed to, because I don't think that the world building needed to be overly complex at all, and to be honest it probably just needed to be more atmospheric for me. I also wonder if I missed out on some of the tension because I didn't necessarily care about the characters until that final portion of the book, and the tension did feel more intense in that section of the book, partly because, I mean, things are always escalating by the time you get to that that final part of a book, and so it's not unusual that the tension would be higher at that stage. But also what contributed to that was that by that point I had developed those relationships with the characters, and so I was more inclined to feel invested and feel that tension because I by that point cared about what was happening to the characters. So like I say, I feel like book 2 might be a better experience for me just because I already have that relationship built up a little bit already, and I'm hoping that because there's not going to need to be so much setup with the characters, because the characters are going to be the same in book 2 as in book 1, that the author might be able to spend a little bit more time on world building, because we're still going to be based in a Caraval, even though it's a different, or I think it's a different Caraval run by the same person, but I'm guessing that the setup of Caraval will be slightly different in book 2. I'm not sure. Haven't read it yet, so I don't know. So overall I gave the book a 3 or a 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it, and I especially enjoyed the last portion of the book. The ending was enjoyable. There were a couple of elements about the ending that I wasn't overly keen on, but for the most part I really enjoyed the ending of the book. It was just the beginning portion of the book that I struggled with a little bit, and that's why I haven't given it 4 stars, because if I had got that connection with the characters earlier on in the book, it probably would be a 4 stars, but because the first 60% were a little bit of a push, it has gone down to 3 or 3.5. Having said that, I didn't consider DNFing it at any point. I was engaged enough, like I said, in the plot to want to stay reading the story, but also, like I said, I'm more of a character-driven reader, and so the fact that I didn't develop those relationships with the characters until much later in the book definitely affected my overall enjoyment. But also, like I said, I am still interested in picking up the second book, which is good because I've ordered the Fairy Loot special edition box for the final book, which is called Finale. But I don't regret that at all, because I did really enjoy the last portion of the book, and I'm hoping that that will carry through to book 2, which I'm thinking I might read next month as part of the magical readathon Owls that Book Roast is hosting. But stay tuned, I will be putting up a TBR with some options for that, because like I've said before, I'm much more of a mood reader. So if I'm going to do a readathon with prompts, I tend to choose a few books for each prompt where possible, so that I am able to still mood read and pick from the list of prompts and from the group of books for each prompt, so that I'm not sending myself into an unnecessary book slump. But that's it for now. I've finished doing my makeup, so I'm gonna get dressed, and then I've got about 20 minutes until I need to leave, so I might read a little bit more of Maid Sama before we head out. But I'm going to be picking up Foundryside this evening when we get home, so I will update you about that then. But in the meantime, I will probably be bringing you along and showing you some clips, because it is actually a nice sunny-ish day today, so hopefully I'll be able to get some pretty nature shots for you. We'll see. So Lee and I just got home and we had a really nice time out walking around Hampstead Heath with a couple of friends of ours, and I promise we have been out. I literally immediately got back into my lounge clothes and took off my makeup, so it looks like I haven't been anywhere, but I promise you I have. And now I am looking forward to starting Foundryside, and I will let you know how I get on. Hello, so I am checking in for the final time on this reading vlog to sum up what I have read this weekend. So I started off by finishing Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I was on page 160-ish when I started, and I did manage to finish this one. It is 400 pages long, and I managed to finish this yesterday as planned, so hooray. I spoke about this one at length a little bit earlier, so I'm not going to bore you with that again, but my thoughts haven't changed as I've ruminated on it throughout the day. I still enjoyed it. I still didn't connect as much with the characters at the beginning as I would have hoped to have done, but I do feel connected with them now, and so I am looking forward to reading book 2, which is called Legendary. And I enjoyed the plot. The plot was interesting. The world wasn't as well developed as I perhaps would have liked it to be, given that the concept was so interesting, but given the target audience, I'm not necessarily overly surprised that that wasn't dealt with in this first instalment in the trilogy, but hopefully there'll be a little bit more world building in book 2. Wasn't quite as atmospheric as I would have liked either, but again, I think that that might be because I wasn't so connected with the characters. So I enjoyed this one, didn't love it, but it does give me high hopes for book 2 in the trilogy, so I will read that at some point and report back to you once I have done so. Then my audiobook was The Alchemist by Michael Scott, and I was on the beginning of chapter 13 when I started this weekend, which was around page 100-ish, I believe. Yeah, around page 100. I'm now in chapter 17, just before chapter 18, which puts me around the 150 mark. So considering I don't do much audiobook reading at the weekend, I'm pretty happy that I managed to read about 50 pages of this one. Still not amazingly well written, but still a fun time. I enjoy the characters and I'm enjoying the plot, and I'm quite liking the fact that there is mythology mixed in. That's something I tend to quite enjoy in literature, particularly fantasy, like I read anything else. Let's be honest with ourselves. No, I don't. Not routinely, anyway. Moving on, I then picked up Maid's Armour by Hiro Fujiwara, and I mean, I can't tell you what page I'm on because it's manga, but I am in chapter 4. So, and I've read this bit here. So, not like loads, but I have read a few chapters and I'm enjoying it. It is very cute as anticipated. We have a protagonist who is class president at her high school and is very dedicated to achieving well on her exams, but her family need additional support because her mum is ill and her deadbeat dad ran out on them, so she works part-time at a maid cafe. And when one of the high achieving and much loved and popular boys from school discovers this, she's really worried about the impact that will have on her life. And I'm really liking the characters. I really am enjoying the art style, which I think is very cute. Those were just some random pages. And yeah, I am enjoying this one. One thing that is slightly irritating me about it is the fact that we have a reintroduction to our protagonist at the beginning of every chapter, which this may have been something that was serialised originally, which would explain that. I don't know. It's just slightly annoying in a bound up version like this, but I think it was serialised, so I'm not mad about it because that's how it was originally written, because presumably the readers weren't originally reading it all in one go as I have been. But still, really enjoying this one. Very, very cute. And to be honest, I ship the protagonist and the main guy character, and I'm really looking forward to them getting together because I'm quite sure that's going to happen, and I think it's going to be super cute when it does. And then finally I started Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett, and I have read 46 pages of this. I'm at the beginning of chapter 5, had to force myself to put it down, so that's a good start. Chapter 1, I was a little bit like, oh, not sure if I'm going to like this, and then something happens at the beginning of chapter 3, I think, something like that. Anyway, fairly early on, let's say, something happens. I'm not going to tell you what. Ooh, what a tease. But something happens that really gripped me, and now I'm sold on it and I can't wait to see what happens. I think the reason, if you don't want any spoilers at all, then skip forward. I will put something on the screen somewhere to say mild spoilers. These are really mild spoilers because it's literally chapter 1. But if you don't want to know anything at all, then feel free to skip ahead. I think what bothered me about chapter 1 in this one was that it is the beginning of the robbery that our main character, whose name is actually Sanchia, not Sansia, I very quickly realised my error because a lot of the language of this world is inspired by Italian language, so clearly it should be Sanchia, not Sansia, and I double checked on the audiobook and it is indeed Sanchia. So yeah, the first chapter deals with the robbery that she is carrying out, which is explained in the blurb. But the thing that I didn't like about it, and this is where you will want to skip ahead if you don't want any spoilers at all, is the fact that this main character is able to touch things and know from her touch what their history is. And this is a fantasy novel, so I'm totally behind that. That's the magic system. Cool, I'm all for it. What I'm not all for, and what is funny in terms of what I'm willing to believe and what I'm not, is the fact that she's supposed to be this incredible thief, but she hasn't bothered to learn what the guard patterns are for the place that she's robbing, and that just seems totally unbelievable to me. So this is what I mean about me being a little bit weird about where I will suspend my disbelief and won't. Magic system where she can read the history of objects by touching them. Totally fine. No problem at all. Not learning a guard pattern when she's robbing a building. Unbelievable. Sorry, don't buy it. I'm weird like that. Anyway, like I said, really early on in this book, so I can't give any sort of definitive thoughts, but I am really enjoying it. There are some characters in this that I am already loving, and yeah, boding well. I can already feel that this is going to be a good one, and I'm so excited to carry on reading it. But it is now 10:15 and it is past my bedtime because I have to get up for work at 6 a.m. and so I'm unfortunately going to have to put this down now and go to bed, but I'll pick it up on my way to work tomorrow, so it's okay. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button. I'd be so grateful, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.